2 and 1. I need 2 volunteers from different teams. Who would like to volunteer? The first volunteer gets to offer their directions. Okay. The second volunteer gets to follow their directions. So here's the directions that you're going to be following. Why don't you come up to the front?
You going to read them? Good luck.
Where's your partner? Come on, who was the partner for that? Come on up. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi.
And who we got with her?
Linda.
Bonnie and Linda. Let's give Bonnie and Linda a hand. Just okay. So one of you gets to read the instructions, and the other gets to follow them. As you follow them, do only what you're told to do. So be very literal about what you're being told.
Can you bring the mic over?
Oh, here we go. Do this. I'm going to clip this in here.
Thanks. So we put the plate in front of us on the table. Open, tie, or clip on bag of bread.
We'll make assumptions.
Pretend. Take out 2 pieces of bread and place them side by side on the plate.
Which side would you like it on? Does it say?
It doesn't say. It says side by side. Open the peanut butter jar by twisting the lid clockwise with your dominant, what's that word? Favorite hand?
Wow, keep reading.
Oh. Put the...
Doesn't it say while holding the jar with your other hand?
No.
It does.
Put the lid down on the table.
Wait a second, but it's counterclockwise.
Lefty loosey.
I do this.
That's clockwise. That's counterclockwise.
It says clockwise.
It says clockwise. I'm like,
That's right. Oh, they did change it. They did change it counterclockwise. Sorry.
Okay, but it's new. We have a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody remember that one?
It's never new at home.
It's never new at home. All right, let's assume it's not new.
Okay.
Let's assume it's not new.
A stop point, you make the leap, you make an assumption, recognize where you're at, you pull the lid off and move to the next step.
Hold the knife in your favorite hand and the jar in your other hand. Put the knife in the peanut butter. Get about 2 tablespoons of peanut butter on knife.
That was pretty good.
That looks
You
like
said
1.
a glob.
I said a glob. Spread the peanut butter on 1 slice of bread on the face of the bread that is up. Cover the white part of the bread.
But I had to pick it up. Oh, I guess I have to leave it there. My 1 tablespoon work.
Is all the white parts covered?
Hold on, I'm working on that.
Beautiful. Use a napkin to wipe off the knife. Put the napkin to the side of the plate on the table. Put the lid on the peanut butter by twisting clockwise with your favorite hand while holding the jar in your other hand. Repeat steps 3 through 7 using the word jelly.
I think I have to put it down on the table.
It's true.
Okay.
Now go back up
So you
with
have to
the
read
jelly.
it. You have to read
I'm going back up.
Okay.
Okay, we know no. Steps 3 through 7. Open the jelly jar by twisting the lid.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay.
Put the lid on the table. Hold the knife in your favorite hand and the jar in your other hand. Put the knife in the jelly get out about 2 tablespoons. That's too much jelly in my opinion.
Can I put these down?
No. But we will assume. Spread the jelly on 1 slice of bread, the slice that is face up, and cover all the white parts.
Oops, I'm getting it on the
You're making a mess that wasn't in the rules.
sorry, my eye-hand coordination.
Use a napkin to wipe off the knife. Put the napkin on the side of the plate on the table.
Do I get to put the knife down? Do you
Put
have-
the lid on the jelly.
All right, we'll presume I can put the knife down.
Okay, so where's... Put peanut butter side on jelly side. Beautiful.
Hey, who wants their crust removed?
Their little hands.
They did a very good job, didn't they? I think, and I'll just tell you, Jill and Shannon, you probably did the best task analysis in all the times I've done this. That's probably the most explicit. Did you notice things that you would add to it now?
Put jar down and put knife down.
I did this just a few weeks ago for an after-school program, and they had things like return unused to the jar. And so they were stuffing everything in the jar. If it wasn't used, they stuffed it in the jar. They had stuff running everywhere, and what I got back was peanut butter in the jelly jar and jelly in the peanut butter jar, and it was interesting. It was interesting. As you develop your plan for teaching or for behavior support, a task analysis becomes an important part of the process when you're teaching kids what you want them to do. The reason I asked to do this, and you can actually do this, have some fun, do this with a staff sometime, have them do it with a bottle of water. And what you'll get is people holding the water, but it never says to tip it down. And it'll run down the, I mean, you get a lot of, but we ask kids to do this all the time. One of the things I wondered about is, now repeat this, and you'll get kids with autistic tendencies in a forever loop, right? It's just sort of the interesting pieces of it that you have to know as you're developing your plan is, have you broken it down into the steps that make sense for your student? Anybody feel like they could eat that peanut butter sandwich now? No? Okay, just checking. All right. So we have clear expectations. We're going to do explicit teaching. We're going to break it down into pieces. We're going to have a system for encouraging desired behavior, a recognition system. I said this earlier. I want to repeat. A reinforcement system is not for the students. A reinforcement system is for the adults. A reinforcement system encourages the adults to reinforce or recognize students at a rate of at least 4 to 7 positives for every negative. If you don't have a system, reinforcing at that rate is extremely challenging. How many of you have ever had somebody check to see what your rate of reinforcement is? I would encourage you, if you ever have an opportunity, get a trusted colleague or somebody who can help you out and have them observe just to see what your rate of positives to negatives is. It's really an interesting thing. You get more of what you pay attention to. We're going to do another little video here just to set it up. This is about what you pay attention. This is an ad. I want you to watch the white team and see how many passes they make. Well, there it goes.
This is an awareness test. How many passes?
Well, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But
13.
did you see the moonwalking bear?
How many of you saw the moonwalking bear in the first go-around? 3 people in the room. You want to see it again? Yeah. Okay. You're thinking they fooled you. I had to see it again too. We'll try it again.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
What do you think? It was there, wasn't it? You ever miss anything? When you're looking for one thing, see something else? Or when you're looking, do you always see what you're expecting to get? This is an interesting one. We talk about, I'll believe it if I see it, but that's not really how life works. That's not how our brain works. We see it if we believe it, not we believe it if we see it. So we're going to talk just for a minute here about reinforcement and punishment, and make sure we're using some of the same definitions. So how do we know what to do? We usually observe role models. This isn't in your handout packet. This is something after talking with Sherry that I just added to it and some extras here. Just get the concepts. We can be explicitly taught by someone, or we can get feedback about our performance. When we talk about reinforcement and punishment, we're talking about feedback, behavioral feedback. When you have people who are using correction because they're upset at the student, that's not feedback anymore. That's being mean, right? I mean, that's about us losing sight of what we're trying to accomplish. We can talk about types of feedback. Recognition, I'm going to separate out recognition and reinforcement. This is not what the same terminology that everybody uses. I use recognition to say, these are the things that we do non-contingent. It's like a recognition is, thank you for being here, glad you're in the class. I like you, I care about you. Reinforcement is a very specific definition. It is a technical term that implies something that increases the frequency of behavior or likelihood of behavior. Pre-correction and redirection, these are things you use all the time, right? Pre-correction is that piece before a student has the chance to do something wrong, you pre-correct them. We're going into the museum now. I want you to remember that you will be safe. We will walk in the museum. We will be, etc. We're going to pre-correct. And redirection is that piece of they get a little bit off track and we sort of bump them back gently onto the direction that we want them to go. Negative is punishment or correction. Why do I put correction in there? We know what punishment is to some extent, and we'll come back to these and lay out specific definitions for them. Correction, if I just tell a student a better way to do something, isn't that loving and caring and helpful and positive? I want to pre-correct. When we're talking about correction, yes, correction may be in the best interest of the students, but don't be confused. It is a negative or an aversive. If you don't believe that, think about the relationships you've had with people who are telling you that you're doing it the wrong way and they know the right way to do it. Or they're always telling you a better way to do it. Correction still counts as an aversive in the relationship. So when we think about negatives, we think about punishment and correction together. Let's go into the definitions. I want you to get the definitional pieces of it so that we're having the same conversation when we talk. It's not critical that you get all the little writing in here. I want you to get the concepts. This row right here is reinforcement. Negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement. It doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative reinforcement. Any kind of reinforcement is going to increase the probability or frequency of the behavior. It does it by definition. I want you to catch this piece of it. We don't know if something is a reinforcer until we try it and see whether the behavior increases, decreases, or doesn't change. Anything that increases the probability or frequency of the behavior is by definition a reinforcer. Doesn't matter what you intended it to be. Anything that increases the probability or frequency of a behavior is a reinforcer. Now let's go down here. This is the punishment row. Negative punishment and positive punishment. Anything that decreases the frequency or probability of behavior is a punisher. We don't know if something is a punisher until we try it and see what happens to the behavior. Why am I spending so much time on this definition? Because you're going to set up plans based on what you believe is reinforcing and punishing to students. But if you don't monitor to see what happens to the behavior, you can get fooled. So here's my question for you. Think about the definition and answer this question. When you know the answer to the question, or you believe you have an answer, raise your hand. Is chocolate a reinforcer or a punisher? Is chocolate a reinforcer or a punisher? Got one hand? A couple more hands? Think about the definition. Is chocolate a I want you to turn to somebody next to you and have just a really quick, what do you think? Is chocolate a reinforcer or a punisher? Three, two, one. You're afraid I'm going to ask you to raise hands and show hands, and you're going to go, I don't want to look like... How many of you are not confident enough that you would want to raise your hand on reinforcer or punisher? What do you think?
I think it depends upon if the child likes it or doesn't like it, and if you're giving it or taking it away.
Okay. So we're talking about whether the child likes it, the context. Anybody else have a different answer?
But if you're allergic to it and you're teasing me with it.
If you're allergic to it,
Changes the behavior? Is it coming before the behavior or after?
this is the critical piece, is what happens to the behavior. Here's the technically correct answer. I don't know. That's the technically correct answer. I don't know. I have to wait and see if the behavior increases or decreases. Again, why am I saying this? Because you're going to set up plans for your students, whether it's school-wide, class-wide, or individual student plans, based on what you think is a reinforcer or punisher. You have to know that you can get fooled. Let me give you an example. I was doing training with a team that was in serious conflict. Before lunch, one of the team members says, I have something I need to share. And he shares something that is really hanging it on the edge. He is in disagreement with the rest of his team. He has struggled with this. He's not shared it, but it's something that's holding him back from moving. And in his being vulnerable and sharing, he moved the team process forward. It was a very powerful moment. We went to lunch, and on the way back to lunch, I stopped by the store and picked up this big bar of chocolate. And just before we got started, I went up to him and I laid the chocolate bar down. I said, thank you for doing that. That was really important to the team process, and I appreciate it. Remember the question I just asked? And remember the answer I just gave you? Tell me, was that chocolate bar a reinforcer or punisher? We don't know. Would it help if I told you that he started laughing when I gave it to him, and he said, you probably picked the only diabetic on the team? Does that matter? Because what don't we know? We still don't know what happened to the behavior.
Maybe he took it home to his wife or she
It really doesn't matter, all of that stuff around it. Yeah, it matters. But for us as behavior analysts now, it doesn't matter. Here's why. I don't care whether he likes it or doesn't like it. I care whether it changes the behavior. I'm going to give you the one I just heard last night that I thought was very succinct and very on point. How many of you love watching politics in the news? There's got to be some in the room that do this, right? How many of you despise it, hate it, wish it would just go away, right? I'm one of those news junkies. I'm fascinated by it. I am also frustrated beyond words at all the negative ads. If you poll Americans, they will tell you negative ads, critical ads, drive me nuts. I wish they would stop them and get onto the content, onto the issues. Do you know why they still use them? They work. That's the bottom line. If you talk to the marketing folks, they work. Doesn't matter what you say, they work. When we develop plans, we have to not only develop the smartest plan we can. My best guess was he liked chocolate. But here's my other guess. Even if he didn't, he probably liked the recognition. It doesn't matter why. If the behavior increases and he's willing to take risks more, greater, more frequently, more likely to take risks, then it worked as a reinforcer. If he took less risks in the future, what was it? I heard it. Say it loud. It's punishment. It doesn't matter what I intended it to be. If it increases behavior, it's a reinforcer. If it decreases behavior, it's a punisher. I want to pre-correct. The use of the word positive does not mean good, desirable, or effective. It simply means we add to. Negative does not mean bad, ineffective, or undesirable. It simply means we remove. Now, I hear a lot of my colleagues and a lot of behavior specialists saying negative reinforcement when what they mean is punishment. Negative reinforcement cannot be punishment, and you already know this. How do you know it? Who can give me an argument for why negative reinforcement can't be punishment?
Reinforcement increases the behavior.
Yes.
Reinforcement
By definition, they can't be the same thing. One increases, one decreases behavior. You now know more than 99% of the population about reinforcement and punishment. Negative reinforcement increases behavior just like positive reinforcement does. The difference is, positive reinforcement, you add something or give something and behavior goes up. Negative, you remove something and behavior goes up. Punishment, it always goes down. Positive reinforcement, you do the behavior, somebody gives you something or adds something, the behavior increases, it was positive, added, reinforcement, increase in behavior. Make sense? Negative reinforcement. This is something you're probably not going to do, but this is something that probably happens to you. I'll give you a parent example. You're in the grocery store. You have your child in the cart. You go into the checkout line. everything that child has ever thought was cool looking is now just outside of arm's reach. And they say, I want the Snickers bar. And you say, you can't have the Snickers bar, it'll spoil your dinner. I want the Snickers bar. And you look around and everybody you know and love is watching you, right? And they get louder and louder and louder and more of a fit. You get where this is going? And you go, okay, okay, okay. Here it is, just stop yelling. The behavior in this case is giving in to demands. And if your likelihood of giving in the future because you know that they're going to throw a temper tantrum is just give them, it's a whole lot easier than dealing with the tantrum, you've just been negatively reinforced. This happens in the classroom with teacher, 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 teacher. Whoa, hold on, Dale. I said I'll be there in a minute. Just hold your hand up. I'll be there. I'm helping somebody. But I need to have your help right now. If you don't have... And so what do? Okay, okay, okay. What do you need? And guess what happens? They take away the aversive. And there's a good chance we've just been negatively reinforced. And there's a good chance we have just positively reinforced their aversive behavior. Positive and negative. Positive punishment. I'm going to use the most extreme example, and I'm going to pre-correct. I am not saying that spanking is a good or desirable intervention. It is the most extreme example. If the student does the behavior and you spank, or the child and you spank, besides going to jail, but that's a whole other issue. No, if you spank and the behavior decreases, it was a positive punisher. Remember, positive does not mean good or desirable or effective. What often happens, though, is in fact behavior problems increase with physical or corporal punishment. And while we intend, remember the work of Beth Solzer Azaroff and Roy Mayer, schools that use primarily punishment-based modes tend to increase in problem behavior. That holds up for corporal punishment as well. There's still 24 states in the U.S. that allow corporal punishment in schools. Texas is one. Texas, the rule in Texas is it's not inappropriate until the physical injury resulting from the corporal punishment is shocking to the general public. One student, 3 trips to to get emergency care, and that's not considered anyway. So as an intervention, if the behavior continues, no matter how extreme we think our intervention or supported our intervention is, it doesn't matter. What do we look at to see if it works? You have to look at the behavior. Does it increase or decrease? Negative punishment is the removal of something and behavior decreases. It's called cost response. If the student breaks something and you say you're going to have to pay for it, if the student is messing around during math class and you say you're going to have to pay for that out of your recess time or your lunch time, they've done the behavior, you've removed something. If that problem behavior decreases, you have negatively punished that behavior. You removed something, and by doing that, the behavior decreased. What you will set up programs around primarily is positive reinforcement and negative punishment. Positive reinforcement and negative punishment. Does this make sense? Yes?
So you're saying in the case of the spanking, if the behavior increases, then it was a positive reinforcement?
You got it. Or it actually could have been a negative reinforcer. It may have been that it allowed them to escape from a situation that was aversive. Do you see how this starts getting into functions of behavior? The student may like going to the office and be willing to put up with a spanking in order to hang out in the office for the day, see the secretary, hang out with his buddies who are also down in the office. On the other hand, it may be that they're willing to put up with a spanking because I'd rather be a bad kid than look like a dumb kid in math class. So I'm willing to put up with a spanking to avoid math and being called to the board and asked to work problems on the board. One of those is an obtain function and one is an escape function. Does this sound familiar? Let's try some quick work here. Whoop. On Monday, Todd gets sent to the office for making obnoxious comments during math. Tuesday, Todd's math class behavior was a repeat performance. The target behavior here is obnoxious comments. The intervention is that he is sent to the office. Was it a reinforcer or punisher? I put this as the model piece of it so that I wasn't asking you this. If the behavior remains the same, no effect, it may be neutral, may have no effect on the behavior whatsoever. Beware, we set up programs that sometimes have no effect on the target behavior. Wasn't a reinforcer or a punisher, it just continues on. Okay, I want to lead you through this one. Help me out here. On Tuesday, Todd's back. Todd's always back, right? His obnoxious behavior in math class is back. The teacher's getting frustrated and he sends Todd to the office, and subsequently Todd is suspended for the remainder of the day. On Wednesday, Todd's math class behavior was worse than Tuesday. What's the target behavior? Obnoxious behavior, obnoxious comments. What's the intervention? Remember, the intervention is a package here. It's sent to the office and suspended. It's going to be hard. You don't know which to separate out, but those two things happened. Was it a reinforcer or punisher? You know that because the behavior got worse, it increased. Let's keep going. Wednesday, Todd continues his obnoxious behavior in class, but while he's gone, the teacher goes, I'm going to try something else. And he teaches Todd's peers to ignore the behavior. The next day, Todd blurts out in math class, the peers ignore him and his comments stop. What's the target behavior? Obnoxious comments. What's the intervention? Is it? We're going to come back and look at this in just a minute. Was it a reinforcer or punisher? How do you know that? The behavior decreased. I'm just poking a little bit to check your confidence level on this. It is important to know what the target behavior is. If you don't know the target behavior, you can't tell whether it's a reinforcer or punisher. Who is our person of interest here? Todd. Let's change that, because you and I have probably experienced a place where it's not really Todd that's at issue. Who might be at issue here? The peers. Todd may be the unwitting victim of a very sophisticated class that knows how to get out of assignments. I could actually do a quick and dirty assessment of the yellow and red zone here by asking you, how many of you in high school, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but how many of you in high school ever set up events in class to get out of? Some of you are going, huh? You're deeply green. The ones that are giggling are in the yellow zone, and the ones that are going, you're in the red zone. I know. We got a test today. Man, we got to get out of this. You know what? If we get Todd going, that'll upset the whole thing. Okay, let's change the focus. We want to look at peers setting up feeding this obnoxious behavior. The target has now changed. What's the intervention? Teaching the other students to ignore. Was this a reinforcer or a punisher? It was a reinforcer. Why?
Because you added them ignoring to the classroom. They had to add a behavior to make it work.
Close. What we know is that the behavior of ignoring increased. So you're right on target. Okay? It's important to know what the focus of your intervention is so that you know and you can track whether or not you're being successful. If you modeled, if you created your intervention as the peers, but Todd's behavior doesn't change, you could say, my intervention didn't work. What's the problem with that?
The intervention did work. They did ignore it.
Yes.
It didn't matter to him.
Thank you, Jill. So it may be that we teach the peers to ignore, and they do ignore, and Todd continues to do what he does. And in fact, we get interventions like that all the time, and it may be an extinction burst, right? It may be that he's got to figure out it's not just the fact that he doesn't need to do a bigger and badder obnoxious comment to get noticed. Okay? When you are thinking functionally about behavior, how many of you have seen this before? Good. So we know that A stands for antecedent, B for behavior, and C for consequence. A, what happens before, B, target behavior, C, what happens afterwards. What are we talking about thus far? We're talking about B, the target behavior, and are we talking about A or C? C. We're talking about what happens afterwards, and what we're really talking about is positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement of a behavior. Does this make sense? We're going to come back to this because when you look at this, in case 1B, Todd was sent to the office and his behavior actually increased. What a goof. What's this kid thinking? We went to punish him and his behavior got worse. What are some plausible hypotheses, best guesses about why this happened? He liked going to the office. If he likes going to the office, are we talking about positive, negative reinforcement or punishment? Did the behavior increase? Therefore, it is a, did we add something or remove something? We added something. Give me another best guess about why it might have increased. Yes?
He didn't want to be in class.
Yes? And so he's doing behavior to avoid class. Is that a positive or negative reinforcement or punishment? Did the behavior increase or decrease? Increase. So we know it's a reinforcement. Was something removed or something added? Yes, escaped. He escaped something. Something was removed. The aversive that he didn't like, the math class, was removed. So it is a negative reinforcer. Do you see how this works? We're going to be talking all about the consequences from a function point of view is what maintains it. That does not eliminate the importance of antecedents and what happens before. In case 1C, Todd's obnoxious behavior was ignored by peers and it decreased. What's a best guess about that? What's that?
He's not getting the attention he wants.
They removed the attention he wanted. Okay. Okay. Just real quickly, and then we're going to lunch. Does punishment work? Does punishment work?
Immediately.
Yeah, bingo. It works by definition. If it doesn't work, if it doesn't decrease behavior, it wasn't punishment. The question is not does it work, the question is at what cost? It's effective in the presence of a punishing agent. Why do people speed on the freeway?
Most of the time they're not caught.
Because there's no punishing agents present. Punishment, if you use a punishment-based system, then they will stop doing the behavior while you're there. It simply increases the covertness of the behavior. It doesn't change whether or not they do it. They just do it around the corner or while you're out taking a break. It requires greater resources to be effective. Increasing severity of spiral. You suspended me for one day. I'm no longer intimidated by that. Now give me a good long weekend. Make it all week. Right? We habituate to punishment. We get used to it. It requires constant vigilance. Reinforcement, the most effective reinforcement that works is what kind? Intermittent positive reinforcement. It's called the gambler's paradigm. If you are missing the targeted behavior and not punishing it every single time, you are intermittently positively reinforcing it. When we talk about why does it matter if the expectations are different in the rest of the school, one of the things to talk to them about is you may be without intending to, reinforcing the behavior that we're trying to change. And when we start talking about this behavior, we can start explaining this in some terms that they get. You don't expect, when you pull the arm on the gambling machines, right, on the one-arm bandit, you don't expect it to pay off every time. Neither do students. They don't expect to get away with it every time. But they know they'll get away with it a lot, just like we do when we're speeding. We know we might get caught, but. And it can produce unintended negative consequences. It can damage relationships, increase anger and aggression, increase covertness and a mean world syndrome. Our kids can start believing, look, all they do is punish me. They're just like all the rest of the adults in my world. The world's a bad place. I've got to take care of myself, and someday I'll be big enough and sophisticated enough, I will punish you into submission. Ever seen that? Okay. Rule number 2. Remember rule number 1? If you want it, teach it. Rule number 2, you get more of what you pay attention to. You get more of what you pay attention to. If you build, if you teach, if you interact with students focused on problem behavior, you will get more problem behavior. If you set up your systems in your classroom or school to focus on problem behavior, you will get more problem behavior. All right, it's lunchtime. I've run over about 6 or 7 minutes, looks like. Is that right? Okay.
It's okay. We'll still go till about 1.
Okay. All right, where's lunch? Sherry, help us out with where we're going and what we're doing.
Right outside the door.
Excellent. 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Okay, feel free to continue eating. We had this for each team. Did every team get one of these? It's a sign language book in Spanish. ISD, you did not get one? Okay.
Didn't get one.
Chicago has one. Okay. All right. Micah got one. Jonathan got one. Okay. All right. If your team didn't get one, pick one up when it's time to leave. Okay, I'll give you guys one. We also, in our office, if anybody would like to borrow one or have one, we have little time counter clickers, and we were talking at the break that this would be a very helpful strategy if you want to get one from us. Keep it in your pocket. Click it every time you give a positive reinforcement or a positive supportive statement to a student, and that will help you kind of track for yourself how often you're giving out those positive, good feedback goodies. What else? One more thing. On the behavior team commitment, let me just point out that one of the things that we're asking you to do is go back to the local area and provide some training. And this is one of the things that Dale is talking about as well. And we're not sending you to the wolves on your own. ISRC is available for support. We will do it with you. Okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, thank you.
Good. All right. Everybody get a chance for some good food? Okay. Now you're all kind of sinking into the chairs. So just to make sure that the brains are going, help me out here. Interpret. What's number 1? Taxable income. Number 2. Booked up. Number 3. Faces in the crowd. Number 4. Running out of room. Okay. Number 1. I heard it. Spread the wealth. Somewhere. Number 2. I think web links. Number 3. X-Files. We know what you've been doing in your evenings. You're still watching the reruns and the movies. And number 4. Too many to count. Number 1. Dead in the water. Split down the middle. Yes. Number 3 is a little hard to see. There you go. You have to be able to actually see what those are. It's zebras. Number 1? The mating game. I like it. We know what keeps you awake after lunch. You got part of it. There it was. Checkmate, game over. Number 2. Rising to the occasion. Number 3. Spur of the moment. Number 4. Very close. There you go. Sidearm curveball. Good. Just want to make sure the neurons are still firing here before we go on. All right. It's important to make sure that we take care of the fine art of self-care, take care of ourselves as we go through this. So again, if you want to keep eating, I'm fine with that. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Okay, so we've been through clear expectations, explicitly taught. We talked a little bit on the task analysis, talked a little bit about positives. And there was actually still some things in those positives that I didn't get to. Here we go. How many of you work in an environment in which using the term positive reinforcement can be seen as a bad thing? Does anybody work in that at all, where they go, you know, we just want kids to do it because it's intrinsically valued, and we don't want to give out coupons and tickets, and does this sound familiar? One of the things that I want you to think about and be able to talk about with others is, why do we use positives? It's not just to change student behavior. Now, I will tell you, I'm a U of O guy, University of Oregon guy, and I'm a behaviorist, but I'm also a behaviorist that believes in the single most important thing that happens in schools is relationship. And when we talk about that, I think you can talk about relationships in very behavioral terms too. But I don't want you to lose sight for a minute that we use positives first and foremost to build positive relationships with students. If you are regularly correcting or punishing students, if you are not giving frequent positives, you will not be seen, you will not build a positive relationship. Now, you might think he's sort of wandering off into some pretty non-evidence-based areas. John Gottman, Gottman. He's not an educator. He is a clinical psychologist who works with families, and particularly couples in relationships. And John Gottman is able to put a couple together in a room for 15 minutes, ask them to talk about whatever their hot button issue is, money, the kids, sex, whatever it is, and he can tell you with better than 92% accuracy which couples will be together in 2 years and which ones will not. You can pull up his research articles that will certainly put you to sleep. But he also has some very easily accessible self-help kinds of books that are based on the evidence. And there's some things that he looks at when he looks at the way people interact with each other. I'm not going to go into that except for one piece. When he looks at the number of times people in the couple, the individuals in the couple interact positively versus negatively, he counts, well, I should say he has some graduate student count them. And then he asked, do you perceive that your partner was more or less positive with you? Were they more positive? Were they more punitive or corrective? If the partner gives more correctives and negatives, more aversives, more punishers, how do you think their partner, their husband or wife, will see them? Do you think that they know that they're more negative? Big time. Big time. What if they have the same number of positives as negatives? How will their partner view them? They view them as negative. They were more punishing. One of the things he says is there is no neutral in a relationship. Okay? So we really want to have at least twice as many positives. That should pretty much take care of it, right? Twice as many positives as negatives. How do you think they're viewed? Negative. What about 3 times as many? Still viewed as primarily negative. This is not how they view the partner so much. This is what they believe the frequency was, that they interacted more negatively than positively. It's not until there's a little more than 4 positives for every negative that the partner perceives that they were more positive than negative. Now I want you to think about your kiddos in your classes. I am not saying that this is research done in schools, but it is about relationships, and I'm going to stretch it a little bit here and extrapolate and say, I think it matters. And when we talk about our kids who come in particular from environments where they're hearing a lot of corrective, a lot of criticism, a lot of negatives, a lot of punishment, I think we really are going to have to provide a lot of positives for them to believe this person cares about me. When we're talking at the yellow and red zone in the pyramid, it's not about their behavior, it's about the relationship. Do you hear what I'm saying when I say, they'll say, it's because you don't like me, Ms. Bianchi. Have you ever heard that? It's not that I did something wrong, it's that you don't like me. What's that about? It's about the relationship piece. When we start using positives, think that first and foremost, the reason that we're giving those is to build positive relationships. They view us as a positive person. And they need 2 pieces. They need positives around who they are. I value you as a person regardless of what you do. And I care about you enough that I will tell you when you're doing the right thing. Who they are and what they do. People need both. If all you hear is who you are stuff, the positives around who you are, they can be under-socialized. These are the kids that go around and trash everybody, but mom and dad love them. Have you seen kids like this that are under-socialized and they will go in and they'll wreak havoc in a home or in a classroom? On the other side, if kids are getting lots of reinforcement around what they do, but they don't know that they're cared about personally, then they believe, you only like me if I'm doing what you want. Kids, people need both. So first we do it to build positive relationships. We mentioned this one before. Oh, this is, you always rush out and high-five me when I homer. How about a hug when I whiff? Let's make sure we give lots of positives at times when they're struggling as well. I think a lot of times we withhold them because we hold grudges. Right? We're angry at them. They irritated us. They messed up our schedule for the day. They messed with our instruction. We had something we wanted to get through today, and their stupid behavior got in our way. And so we withhold those positives. All right, the second reason, besides building positive relationships, is we want to create positive, inviting environments. I want the classroom or the school to be a place where kids want to be. I want them to say, good things happen to me in this room. And the only way to do that is to make the environment inviting in ways that good things are going to happen. Receiving lots of positives and having good relationships there is an important one. And the last one is to encourage desired behaviors. Real quickly, new behavior, if you're starting out with new behavior, you have to be planful and immediate. These are our rookies. If they're just trying out new behavior, you need to catch them being good. You're going to have to watch for it. If you're looking to count how many passes the white team makes, you're going to miss the moonwalking bear. Think about what you're looking for. Are you looking because you know that they have a behavior disorder? Are you looking for their problem behavior? Or are you looking for their appropriate, good, on-task behavior? On the other side, for our kids who are squared away, they're good, they're highly capable social leaders, you can be natural and delayed. They're going to interact with you in a way that draws out positive interactions. Tangible, intangible, extrinsic, intrinsic. I only want to talk about this for just a minute, but I think people get this confused. A lot of people do not like tangibles because they believe that it has to do with extrinsic. And the answer is not necessarily. Tangible simply means you can touch it. Intangible means you can't touch it. Extrinsic means that the value comes from without. Intrinsic means the value comes from within. So is a coupon a tangible? If I give a little token and say thank you, is that a tangible? If I say thank you and no token, what is that? Intangible. Now, that coin, that little token, is the value intrinsic or extrinsic? How many of you have pictures of people that you care about? Is the value the paper and chemicals? Or is it the symbol of a relationship? One of the things that a tangible does is it prompts us to be more positive, number one. Number two, it extends the power of our relationship. If I say, thank you for doing that, and I walk away, I guess I shouldn't walk too far. I say thank you and walk away. When she forgets the interaction, the reinforcement value has decreased. If I say thank you and give a certificate or a coupon or something, the value, that will continue to deliver positives if that was a positive interaction, a positive relationship, etc. I can be long gone and they can still value that tangible. But they may value it for extrinsic reasons. What can I get from it? Can I trade it in at the school store? Can I get something for it? Or it may be, I was recognized and acknowledged. This is a symbol of a relationship. We need to be very cautious about confusing those two. I think there is a place for extrinsic and a place for intrinsic. If you want to go into that at more detail, we can do that at another time, or I can send you some information. But I want it. How many of you have read Alfie Kohn's Punished by Rewards? Okay, well, I'm pleased to hear that. It's actually fairly misleading in some ways. It's accurate, but it's accurate at about the 1%. What we know is that extrinsic reward does not damage intrinsic value. There's a lot of good research. He simply didn't carry the research out far enough to look at longer term impact. So if you want that, email me and we can get you that. Okay. Questions about reinforcement and punishment? It's not lunchtime. It was lunchtime. Yes?
Just a bit about that, but you had a slide up earlier that had positive, negative, and then neutral feedback, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the neutral feedback.
Yeah, I want you to know about neutral in the sense that if it doesn't change behavior, it was neutral. So we do an intervention. The behavior doesn't change. We say, what's wrong with this kiddo? We had this plan. It was a really great plan. We intended it to be a positive or a corrective, and it wasn't. I just want us to be aware, if over time we see that there is no change in behavior, it was neutral. We might, for example, say thank you to a student for doing something, and it may not change behavior at all. So while we think we know what the outcome might be, it's important to watch for the behavioral outcome to determine whether it's a reinforcer, a punisher, or neutral. Good clarification.
Could you just talk a little bit about the amount of time that you think is needed with these interventions to really see if they're going to work? Because we run into this, maybe something's tried for a day or two, and then, well, it doesn't work. And, then we're asked, well, exactly how long before we move to something else? So
And the answer is 47 minutes, with give or take 3 seconds. That's a really hard question. It's a really good question. There's a number of factors to take into account when you look at what does it take to change a behavior. Part of it is what's the learning history. If you're going to change the trajectory of behavior for a 5-year-old who's been doing a behavior and it's fairly new, if it's not working pretty quickly, we've got a problem. How many of you are high school folks? If you've got a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old